there you go.
Okay, hi.
No, you're not.
Okay. Okay. We're good.
All right, well, I will officially call the meeting to order. And it's funny, the school district is calling me now. I don't know what about, hopefully nothing important. So we're starting off tonight with one of our happy things we do, which is the Nikon Service Award, which I guess it starts at 20 years, Larry? Is that the first-
25, I think.
25 is the first, our
Yeah.
lowest on here is 25, but
Yeah, I think that's where it starts.
okay, well then that makes sense why we started 25 on my list as well then. But tonight we acknowledge people that have 25 or more years of service in increments of 5 years. So 25 years, we have Steve Delacoli, Mike Morano, Kevin Johnson, Mike Foley, Anna Maria Kusiak, Larry Schaffler. Larry, congratulations.
Wow, 20 for wow.
25. He was a child when he started. For 30 years, we had Marco Parada, who then retired. Thought 30 was enough. 35 years, we have Steve Caparel and Kevin Smith. And 40 years, we have Mike Cerrone and Chris DePauli, which is amazing to me, Larry, that they were here for 15 years when you started.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the strange math that went on in my head.
Yeah.
But
Is that right?
we'd like to congratulate all of them and thank everyone for their many, many years of service. It's fantastic.
We have certificates for all of them, and we normally would have handed them out, but obviously it's a little different.
Yeah. It's not quite as much fun when you share it on the screen.
No.
Next up is per village policy, any checks over $25,000. We have several. The first one is the vendor is Gianna Fiat Corp. for the Main Street and Station Road pedestrian improvements. It's from the Capital Fund. That's $339,996.81. The next one is for JC Land and Site Development, Inc. That's for the Matheson Park project from the Capital Fund. That was $122,160. The next one's Creighton Manning, which is part of the Main Street pedestrian sidewalk improvements, also from the Capital Fund for $38,859.55. We also have Deal and Sons for a dump truck with a sander from the Capital Fund. That's $215,370. We also have Buyer Ford for the building inspector's vehicle. It's from the Capital Fund, also $39,858.38. And then GM Fiat Corporation Main Street pedestrian project from the Capital Fund for $132,495.32. After that, I will move on to public comment. There is a lot, but I'm happy to report that A through M were actually discussed at the last meeting, or at least referenced at the last meeting, but they came in after the cutoff to be published. So we just wanted to make sure that all of those were included. So if anybody wanted to read them, everybody gets to see them here now. Let me now go back to starting with 3N, which is from Melissa Brown. Dear Mayor Smith, Deputy Mayor Keough, and trustees, I'd like to bring to your attention the signage in the window of Method Fitness. I believe these posters are unfit for audiences of all ages. I've asked the owner of Method Fitness to turn the signs inward and mentioned they are terrifying of nature, especially to kids, since the subject matter is the murder of a 5-year-old child and pedophiles. If permit would not be granted for these to hang up and down Main Street where our kids walk, why would these be allowed to hang in windows displaying to the same walkers by? I employ the village to review village code and decency and require that the owner turns them inward so our clients can see them from the inside. Our children cannot find them from the outside sidewalk. I believe this is a place for everyone and everything should not suited for Main Street. Thanks for your time and consideration, Mr. Brown. Please add this paragraph, explain more reinforcing my reasoning. Window signs should not be the same consideration for decency as other signs on Main Street. While the images are not obscene, rated X visuals, the subject matter is still obscene and horrifying children and parents. Content is certainly not G or PG, and the windows on Main Street have an audience of all ages, regardless of they're taped to the inside of the window or not. I'm thinking children wouldn't go to a movie about adults raping and killing 5-year-olds, so why do we want signs on Main Street? Allowing these materials is a slippery slope, but as a place to stay in the newspaper and off of our main streets. The next one is from Peter Agavino. Dear Mayor Brian Smith, please be advised that my family and I, 4 drivers, find it extremely challenging attempting a right-hand turn off of South Ferris Street eastbound onto Main Street without extending over the WL line. Current redesign has caused all of us to jump the curb, frightening all of us in the process. We now find ourselves with 2 choices while stopped at the corner mentioned above. First choice would be to attempt the right turn while looking to the right side view mirror to ascertain whether the right rear tire will clear the curb and avoid going up over the curb. This is a dangerous option for both the vehicle operator and pedestrians alike. Having to keep your eyes focused on the right side view mirror while making a right turn into a busy road and crosswalk is never a good option. Of course, this is what needs to be done to avoid driving over the curb while staying in the eastbound lane of travel on Main Street. Second option would be stop at the corner, slowly extend the vehicle far enough into the roadway off Main Street, glance on the right side view mirror, and proceed to the right turn. Second option may seem like the best choice. However, by extending a vehicle far enough into the roadway of Main Street to clear the southeast curb, only subject the vehicle's front end, although no fault of the operator, we send over the WL lines, the vehicle travels right eastbound onto Main Street, another dangerous option. This will only be exacerbated during heavy snowfalls, plowed snow pushed off the curbs along Main Street, making roadways even narrower. How will one possibly make a right turn eastbound onto Main without being forced over the WL line under these conditions? I don't believe there'll be any other option. It's hard enough now. I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. Additionally, the condition described is not inclusive of the southwest corner of South Ferris and Main Street. It applies to the southeast corners along Main Street, which were subject to the recently redesigned sidewalk project. We also have the same turning radius. Notification serves sufficient notice to the village outlining two various options vehicles are now left with. Making a successful right turn has never been as challenging as it is now, and I find the appropriate solution I feel is imperative. Couldn't agree more, Mr. Agravino. My daughter actually on the South Continent bump out popped her tire about day 2 of them being there. I think everyone now that we've seen them in place realizes that perhaps they go out too far, or at least that the curbs are too sharp and tall on the west side of the street. So the Department of Transportation is reviewing them. Their first answer was that they were within code, which we said wasn't good enough for us because we see what other people are saying, including Mr. Agavino, but it is under review. And once we have a solution, we will make the appropriate corrections to them. Next up, we have Karen Thomas. Mr. Mayor, members of the Village Board of Trustees, as a longtime resident of Irvington, I have typically very few issues with the village board's management, which overall always leans towards maintaining quality of life that is nurturing and progressive. However, as a member of the Irvington Gardens community, has brought to my attention the board of, actually, this is part of the public, I'll just read it now. We have sufficient experience to know that electric blowers are not effective, especially when the leaves and grass clippings are wet from dew or after rainfall. Since spring cleanup has seen appreciable decrease in the cleanliness and look of our property, which is not what I and 87 other families have come to expect from our maintenance fee. On our 5.2 acres, we have estimated 200 individual trees and shrubs that require constant maintenance. This requires a crew of several landscapers to achieve. Additional cost of $57,000 annually to our co-op, an added cost of $655 per unit, almost 1% increase for our residents' maintenance bill, and we've seen it's totally unacceptable to most of them. Residents of Irvington Gardens hope you will reconsider the change in current ban. As the spring and fall just have too much debris to be handled by ineffective leaf blowers, electric leaf blowers. In addition, the most recent tropical storm clears showed the need to have more powerful blowers available to clean up the property. Similarly, the snow cleanup is equally important. Sincerely, Karen Thomas. And Susan Watson, dear sirs, and ma'ams, I have been a resident of Irvington for 76 years, and my family has resided here for 101 years. We have served as trustees, a member of the planning board, and my daughter is now the chairman of the zoning board. I love this town. I've been shocked by what happened in the Main Street. Each block has lost 4 parking spots, and the way the curb cuts are constructed, you can't turn up Main Street without going into oncoming traffic. There is no reason, all caps, to put those curb cuts on Main Street. Side streets already had curb cuts for wheelchairs, and the loss of parking spaces made it impossible for the merchants. Also impossible to have large trucks unload Main Street and the hardware store, Jordanes. Amount of money and time spent on those curb cuts and horrible yellow signs would have been much better spent on burying electric wires underground so that we could have had a view of our beautiful river. Sincerely, Susan Watson. I will add that once again, the DOT is reviewing them. And secondly, it would have paid for about 3% of the line burying costs. That's it for correspondence. So I will open it up to public comment that's not related to the public hearing.
So if anyone has a comment, they can raise their hand on Zoom, or and we'll allow you to talk.
Otherwise, I will move on to the consent agenda. Anybody have any questions or comments on the consent agenda? Otherwise, I will make a motion to approve the consent agenda if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now we'll go to the continuation of a public hearing to consider a local law amending the use of gas-powered leaf blowers. it's a continuation, so it's already open. I guess the update I'll provide is that we're not voting tonight, which I think was obvious from our last meeting. Several of the trustees are actually meeting with landscapers this week to get some demonstrations like we talked about at the end of the last meeting. And we continue to take comments from the public. Who was it today that passed the complete ban? Was that Larchmont?
Larchmont.
Larchmont. So, we're not the only ones looking at this, but we are listening to what everyone has to say. And we will open up the public hearing now for any public comment. We've obviously gotten we've gotten a lot of, this is probably the most letters we've gotten in several years on an issue. So we appreciate everyone already sharing their thoughts via email. I don't think we got any hard letters or snail mail letters, and all the comments that we had last time obviously were very helpful for the trustees to hear. Maybe everyone's already said everything, especially because we're not voting. Okay, well, we're going to keep the public hearing open anyway, so keep your comments coming, and you will have another opportunity to talk about leaf blowers. Larry will move on to number 7, which is adoption of records retention and disposition schedule, LGS 1.
Yeah, Brenda, did you want to cover this, or you?
Either way.
Straightforward. Okay, so the village is subject to a retention schedule that's published by the state that outlines which documents have to be kept for how long. And so the record schedule has recently been updated by New York. It's been streamlined. I don't know all the ins and outs of what the new features are, but it has been updated, and it's probably the first update certainly since I've been around, or at least sometime in the 90s.
25 years.
The 25 years, yeah. So anyway, that's all it is. It's pretty administrative, but it governs, how long we keep documents.
So Larry, I didn't go through the references in that. I read it, and I did send an email to the Historical Society. So I'm just not concerned, but to make sure we review anything that actually has some historic value, that we keep that. And I do believe the Westchester County Historical Society, they have archives, and some historical societies and others sometimes ask them to keep documents that we don't want to keep, but that the public, when they do historic research, may need or want. So just keeping that in mind as we go through this new approach.
Yeah, and actually the approach isn't terribly new. So there are many documents that we would have been eligible to have been thrown away, but they're historical in nature, and we still have them. We don't just dispose of them because they happen to be on a schedule that tells us to. What we do dispose of are the routine things. So, we keep copies.
Claims.
Yeah, vouchers, expenditures after 6 years that can be thrown out. The routine accounting records, things like that. But historical documents, we don't just look at this list and say, okay, we can throw it out. So,
right. I thought that was the case. Yeah, Brenda.
Yeah.
Some of the updates are to keep up with the times. Like way back, we didn't have OPEB actuarial reports. So this one includes that I must keep the actuarial reports for OPEB. That's the other post-retirement benefits for a certain number of years. So it's really keeping up with the times and those documents that we now collect and have that we didn't have years ago.
And obviously things can be kept in a virtual way. They don't have to be kept in a piece of paper, I assume.
Right. And we often do have scans of everything, even though it can be physically disposed of. We have scans of documents.
Right. Okay, thanks. Just checking.
Yep.
Anybody else? Back to my reading exercise. Actually, this one isn't that long. Resolved by the Village Board of Trustees of the Village of Irvington that records retention and disposition schedule LGS 1 issued pursuant to Article 57A of the Arts and Cultural Affairs Law containing legal minimum retention periods for local government records is hereby adopted for use by all officers in legally disposing of valueless records listed here therein. Further resolved that in accordance with Article 57A, only those records will be disposed of that are described in the records retention and disposition schedule LGS 1 after they met the minimum retention period described therein. Only those records will be disposed of that do not have significant administrative, fiscal, legal, or historical value to merit retention beyond established legal minimum periods. I will make a motion if I can have a second.
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 All in favor?
Aye.
Next is appointment of personnel in the water department. Did you want to walk us through this one, Larry?
Yeah, so this is these are two appointments. They're promotions, essentially. The first is Ken Mastropietro to the position of water sewer maintenance foreman. And you had previously promoted him. He's now passed his test, his civil service test. So this is the permanent appointment that you'll be considering. The second is a follow-up promotion of Ray Ross into the position of water and sewer maintenance worker grade 1. He also passed the test. You hadn't previously promoted him, but he passed his test. He's being promoted into the position that Ken Mastropietro was in. So this continues the advancement of the people in the water department. They're obtaining their licenses to be able to operate a water system, and that's ultimately what we need in that department.
We've talked a lot about, how great our water department is. And, for a small group, they really do an unbelievable job, not just at kind of the day-to-day maintenance, but, kind of a multi-year maintenance plan, working on breaks, proactively trying to, keep the valves working, all the great things that they do. And I'm happy to see, it's nice to promote the guys from within as well and continue the team intact, but they do a great job.
Yep.
So if there's no questions, I will go ahead and read. Resolved to appoint Kenneth Mastropietro to the permanent position of water and sewer foreman at an annual salary of $100,248 effective September 22nd, 2020, subject to a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. And further resolved to appoint Raymond Ross Jr. to the contingent permanent position of water and sewer maintenance worker grade 1, an annual salary of $80,376 effective September 22nd, 2020, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks and not more than 52 weeks. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Change orders, Larry. Madison
Okay.
Park Playground Project.
Yeah, so these are three additional change orders. I know that it seems like there has been a lot of them there, which there have been, but we are still within our budget. We're not going over on this at this point, and we don't anticipate it. So these are some additional changes that have been identified by the design team in conjunction with the contractor and our engineer and Joe and his department. So number 8 is for some additional shrubbery that are going to be positioned in key places. Number 2 relates to the splash pad, which is a very minor one. We are having some difficulty in testing that splash pad and getting it up and running, but that's this change order is not necessarily related to that. And the third change order is for additional seating that's being done in a variety of areas to try to better blend in the reconstructed areas with the rest of the park. That's it.
Questions on this one? Good to hear we're still in budget, Larry, and I think we're still roughly on schedule other than the splash pad issues.
Yeah, they definitely are getting much closer. If you have a chance to if you want to, get in touch with Joe, he'll be happy to to get you down there.
Sure.
Yeah.
So this is, the park is going to have irrigation, correct?
Irrigation into the planting areas, yes. Not for the whole grass seeded area.
But where the trees Trees and shrubs are going in.
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. Okay,
We're good? All right. Resolved to approve change order number 8 in the amount of $22,284 for the installation of additional shrubs, perennials, and trees in Matheson Park. And resolved to approve change order number 9 in the amount of $750 for the installation of new floor drains and piping to the splash pad. And resolved to approve change order number 10 in the amount of $22,319 for the installation of additional top truss and seating for center islands and area along Hudson River, Matheson Park. And further resolved to authorize the village administrator to execute said change orders. I'll make a motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Appointment of personnel in the Department of Public Works. This was related to the retirement, Larry.
yeah, so related to the retirement of Marco Parada. So this is the appointment of a full-time laborer.
So hopefully we'll get 30 years out of Christopher DiNardo as well. I think the only thing I'll add to this, other than that, you can see from the memo from Greg that, Christopher's been working on, working with the department for a long time. So he's definitely a known entity. I will add that, we've had conversations as a board that, Larry brought up that, this was a good reminder that, we have to, not just the police department trying to diversify our employees, but village-wide, whether it's the library or the Department of Public Works or the rec department or Village Hall, not for fault of anyone, but we just have a lot of it is you knew somebody that gives you a shot at working part-time, and we're kind of challenging all the department heads to think creatively and think how we can kind of expand our applicant pool proactively, just and not for, and I think it's for very practical reasons that, we all believe that a more diverse workforce is a better workforce. So, I think that that's, something that's important to all of us. So, that kind of came out of this discussion, not really related to this hiring, but just kind of a general conversation that came up as we did discuss it. So. But I will go ahead and read this if no one has any questions. Resolved to appoint Christopher DiNardo to the position of laborer step 1 at an annual salary of $50,301, effective September 22nd, 2020, subject to completion of a probationary period of not less than 12 weeks, not more than 52 weeks. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next is accept resignation from the planning board. Sheila Ty, who's been an active member in Irvington for as long as I can remember, probably as long as you've been here, Larry, almost, right?
Just about, yeah.
She was on the village board for many years, and then she's been on the planning board as kind of a second career for a very long time. So we thank Sheila for all of her many, many years of service, and I know she's spending a lot of time in Florida now, and I'm sure as it's getting colder, she's probably gone already, but thank you, Sheila, for all those years of service.
Thank you.
Resolved to accept with regret the resignation of Sheila Ty from the planning board effective August 31st, 2020. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Dedication of Lewis Road sewer main extension. This is several years in the making, Larry.
Yeah, literally. So yeah, back in 2017, owners at the end of Lewis Road requested permission to add on to the sewer system that was existing under Lewis Road. There were a number of private hookups, very long private hookup lines that ran to the very end of the existing sewer. And the owner was proposing to replace those very long service lines with a public main, and then allow the owners to reconnect back to that public main. So it's a much more reliable way to do things. As you can imagine, as a homeowner, if you had a private service line that was A, very old, and B, very long, that you're open to lots of problems. So this shortens that and makes it a much better system, and also enable the owners at the end to connect to sewer. So the board did give permission to do that back in 2017. And they have constructed it. They constructed it to specifications, and it was approved by the health department and approved by our water and sewer superintendent. So it is being recommended, offered for dedication to the village, and recommended to take it, to accept it.
Okay, any questions? Whereas in Resolution 2017-051 dated April 3rd, 2017, the Board of Trustees approved the extension of a sewer main on Lewis Road at the request of Bruce and Dean Goldsmith. And whereas the sewer main extension has been constructed and approved by the Westchester County Department of Health and the Irvington Water Sewer Superintendent, whereas the Goldsmiths have offered the completed sewer main extension for dedication to the village, now therefore be it resolved to accept the completed sewer main extension on Lewis Road. I'll make the motion if I can have a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Next up is reports of boards, standing committees, and officers. I do see 2 hands up in the public. Will be a public comment after this section. So trustee liaison reports. Start with Mark Gilliland in traditional order.
Left-hand seat, yeah. I just want to say that the new member of the Tree Commission is now sitting in on the meetings and is getting up to speed. So that's a good thing. We now, it's always better to have more than less, because have more eyes on things and get a conjunction of opinions. So that's good.
Yeah.
And I know that GPTF has been in contact with Larry Schaffer, because they've been interested in trying to get some updated literature out for leaf season to talk about leaves and blowers and mulching in place and all that stuff. So just letting people know that it is coming up to leaf season, and it's, there's a lot of information on the GPTF pages on the Irvington website, but also at leleny.org, the county website, about how to mulch and the benefits of mulch and so forth. And that's it.
Great. Larry Lonke?
Okay, liaison report from Parks and Rec. The Community Advisory Board kicked off the start of the 2021 year with its first virtual meeting on Tuesday, the 15th. 61 participants joined in, a great way to start. The ISCAB Executive Board will meet tomorrow, Tuesday, the 22nd, a virtual meeting at 8 a.m. Over 40 families attended a tour of the O'Hara Nature Center Educational Gardens this past Sunday. Special thanks to CJ Riley, Peter Strom, and Nikki Coddington for leading the event. The department will be hosting the Irvington High School tennis teams at Memorial Park starting on September 29th. The school tennis teams will have full use of the 3 courts Monday through Friday from 3:30 till 7 p.m. Residential court reservation will be available from 8 a.m. till 3:30 p.m. and again from 7:15 till 9:45. We'll also be putting up the 3rd net for use by school and residents on the 29th. Last week we kicked off the fall Snapology Lego STEAM classes. 2 more sessions tomorrow. They'll run 3 different 4-week sessions, ages K through 5th grade at Memorial and Scenic Hudson Park. Youth soccer is back. 2 different soccer sessions will start at Scenic Hudson Park on Tuesdays. That will run for 5 weeks, again, pre-K through 2nd grade. There's a kickball program for 3rd through 5th grade. That's also on Thursday at Memorial Park. Total of 8 teams and over 70 participants. Online registration for Music with Mark is ongoing. That's always a hit. Starts October 1st, ages 2 and older at the O'Hara Nature Center. Online registration for Dance and More with Ms. Lauren is ongoing. Starts October 1st, ages 3 and older. The Senior Food and Supply Delivery Program is still going strong. We're still delivering to about 70 homes each week. We're grateful to the volunteers who are there every week. We're developing long-term field rental agreements with Hardball New York from Elmsford and the Hastings Little League. Both organizations have started their programs with us. Both Memorial and Scenic Hudson are being used. The 2 adult softball leagues continue at Scenic and Memorial. The Recreation Department is actively searching for a permanent provider to call home for our online registration. Our hope is to have our new software up and running by January 1st. The current online register site will still be used until a new site is located. Social distancing is still required in all parks. We're working on developing new programs every day. If you have an idea, please reach out to staff. And finally, we're hopeful to return some level of programs inside the O'Hara Nature Center, the Senior Center, and the rec. We're working to make sure that we can provide a safe environment for some level of activity. Thanks, Joe.
Should we go with Connie next?
Wait.
Harry is finished.
Oh, sorry.
Done.
Okay, I thought he was done. All right, good.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I can report on the theater. You know, of course, suffering as Broadway and all the theaters are in this world of the COVID pandemic, but I would say the effort to do things that are exciting but virtual is quite a job. But I would say Greg Allen and his commissioners and assistants are doing an incredible job. So this Saturday, go on the theater website and you can sign up to watch a very special show. In fact, our very own Brian Smith apparently is narrating the show called Irving the Theater Nut.
And I did not do my mayoral speed reading time.
Okay, if it's anything like the resolution, you're in for a treat. But that looks like a lot of fun. And there's also another little video of all kinds of people, some people on this very call right here that will be saying why they missed the theater, the live theater. The other thing, you know, it's been delayed, but it's really supposed to happen soon, which is on the new Mario Cuomo Bridge, the kiosks are to be a place where all our local businesses and our local historic and interesting sites will be featured, so that all those walkers and bikers, when they're looking for some place to go and come, you know, to eat or visit, will be able to see these on the kiosk when they're at the plazas. So that's only Irvington, Terrytown, and Sleepy Hollow that are featured at the kiosk. Not right there at the moment, but it's supposed to go live soon. Thank you.
Great. And Janice.
Well, the big news today is schools open. It was wonderful to see those big orange buses on Broadway. The steps taken to open the schools included extensive staff training on health and safety, SEL, technology and instruction, phased in opening, and today was the first day of hybrid, which means that students last name beginning A to L attend school live on Monday and Tuesday, K to Z on Thursday and Friday. Everybody is remote on Wednesday. Moving to 1-1, and as of about 11:30, when I heard from our liaison, things were going smoothly. Moving to 1-1 Chromebooks for all of the students, safety measures in the schools, masks, social distancing, hand sanitizer, additional hand washing stations, signage, changed traffic patterns, desks 6 feet apart, plastic barriers for close quarters, sanitizing buses between routes, etc. And big thanks to the village for having the crossing guards out there today to assist the pedestrians. Another opening that will be forthcoming, not quite yet, but the library is hoping to reopen on a limited basis soon. For any of you who've gone back to museums, botanical gardens, whatever, timed entry is the way openings are being handled. So they will limit the number of patrons in the library at any one time and limit visits to a half an hour. What they're waiting for are the plexiglass partitions between the checkout desk and the public. Meanwhile, circulation has remained strong during the entire pandemic period. People have been picking up books from the lobby and returning books to a bin in the library. And then there's a 5-day period of literally moving books from day 1 table to day 2 table to make sure that they're fully safe by the time they're reshelved. Fire department, as of September 24th, 17 calls this month, 253 year to date. Continuing all safety procedures, including wearing masks. There was a Tarrytown standby, an Ardsley structure fire, and the September 11th ceremony. So thanks to everyone who responded to those. Maintenance, the first Saturday maintenance will be on October 3rd. And September 3rd, there will be active shooter training session held with multiple mutual aid departments, police, fire, and EMS. And on October 3rd, the chiefs will hold an inspection for the Board of Trustees. This is usually a community event involving many officials and other firefighters from other departments. Obviously can't do that this year, but they will have the trucks out for inspection by us. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
Janice, what was that date for the inspection?
October 3rd.
Got it.
And it's going to be at 10 in the morning, I believe. Not the usual evening party.
Village administrators report.
So a couple things. First is a last minute reminder that tomorrow, Wednesday, and possibly Thursday, South Buckout Street will be milled and paved. It's probably the first time in anyone's memory that road was repaved. We're having parking. All parking has to be removed from the street, which, if you know South Buckout Street, is no small feat. Metro North is cooperating with us to allow residents to park temporarily without a permit or any payment in the Metro North parking lot if they choose to. There has been a fair amount of coordination between us and the co-ops, and it's been very helpful and productive. Our police will be on scene to help with some of the traffic flow. We've coordinated as much as we can with the schools, not that it should impact any traffic getting through. The road will be open, but you may have delays. You may not be able to get through quite as quickly as you'd like. So if you're traveling through the area and you have a choice, you might want to go the other way. So anyway, it's a big job. That's one thing on South Buckout. The other is is just today, the last two of the 4 charging stations were activated. So now there are 2 separate locations. The library parking lot, which had been activated a few weeks ago, and now the Aqueduct Park, which is active. As you recall, as we'll announce, we did just a posting onto the village website, but we'll do a little larger outreach. The charging is free, and while the vehicle is being charged, after a fairly short grace period, once the vehicle is done charging, if the vehicle remains there, the rate is $5 an hour to continue to park there. So the idea is that we need people to move so that other people can utilize the spaces and the charger. There's some signage we still need to put up, so it's not terribly evident that the charging stations are there. They do appear in the app that people will need to download in order to do the charging. So they can locate them on the app. But we'll be putting in signage as well. That's it.
Great.
Yay.
Yeah.
Village clerk treasurer's report. I think we're gonna have an update on the budget, COVID impacts, et cetera.
Right.
I'm going to share the document. Right, Brenda? Is that
Thank you, Larry. If you
Okay,
would.
give me 1 second here? And
I sent it out to the trustees earlier today. I thought it was a good time, now that we're 3 months into our fiscal budget and about 6 months into the pandemic, just to see how it has impacted the village financially. I think you've heard a lot about our department heads and how they've needed to adapt and adjust to the challenges of working in the new COVID environment and serve the public. But this is really just focusing on the financial story we have here. So I thought I'd review, just to let you know, on a few of the really pertinent items, how they've been affected. So if you want to go through the list here, Property tax, I will say that we had a very strong first half collection. We gave an extension to residents to pay by the end of July, July 21st. And we have a collection rate of 95%. Interestingly, some homeowners opted to pay their entire tax for the year. So what that did is has our collection really ahead of schedule. But if you look at the uncollected for the first half, it's at a 95%. Sales tax is very interesting. It needs analysis because you have the tax rate that went up last August. That in of itself gave a 30% tax increase. So when I say here that the tax received for April, May, and June was level with the same time last period, it really means the activity was down 30%, but because the rate went up by 1%, which was 30%, it was level. So it was a good thing for the village. We didn't have any downturn in that, what we were expecting, because we hadn't raised the expectation at that point. Interestingly, I do get the figures for each month. The figures for July and August, July was up 29% over last year, and August was up 28% over the same period last year. That's about a 30% increase. And the explanation would be that was the 1% in the tax rate. So you could, assume then that the activity was about the same and the increase was due to the 1% increase. When we get the September numbers, that's going to be more indicative of the sales activity in our area, because then it's going to be calculated on the same basis as it was last year. So then you can compare apples to apples for the same period. On our mortgage tax, as you recall, during the budget season, we decreased the expectation by $75,000, thinking that COVID would keep people from looking at homes. As we are aware, that has not been the case. We've had a high level of sales activity in home sales. Just analyzing that, if home sales this year is the same as it was last year, it'll bring our revenues $100,000 over what we budgeted this year. So with the recent surge, you can, it does suggest that the number will exceed last year's mortgage tax numbers. We'll know better in October when we get our first payment. Parking fees, that is so reflective of people just not commuting. I looked at the numbers for last July. July is typically a slow month because people are on vacation. We ran about $1,500 for the month. This month it was $25. So it just shows people are not commuting. People have not asked for a refund. We still have a waiting list for the parking down at Ardsley train station, but we'll see what happens when the renewals go out in January.
I'm still on the list.
Yeah.
The waiting list, that is.
So we'll see what happens. We'll see if people commute, and we'll see if they're still going to their office, or do they have virtual offices now?
Brenda,
Go ahead.
is there a downsize on the parking revenue? I mean, besides the fact it's not coming in, is there any other expenses that aren't being covered? Like some kind of payment
No.
system or whatever that has to be, that's on a monthly contract?
Well, basically, I signed off today on the monthly fee for the pay station is $55. So I said, ironically, I'm paying $55 for the kiosk, and I have $25 in, those are the credit card revenues that came in. So it's a slight loss. Thank goodness we don't really heavily depend on it, but it's a slight one, right?
Yeah.
The $15,000, that's net. That's a net revenue after we take out those expenses. So
Right. Okay.
that's a
Sounds-
net amount, right? So the entire revenue for the monthly and the commuter parking in total is about $55,000 in the village budget. Our building department has been extremely busy. I think it's a function of people selling and need to get their C of Os up to date. It's some new construction, it's additions, but now 3 months into our current budget, they've made 50% of their annual revenue budget.
Wow.
So
So busy.
I don't know how many are one-timers or one-time hits. Pretty much they all are, but they have been extremely busy. As our theater is dark, as they say, or on intermission, there is no revenue there. The revenue is budgeted at 85,000, but they have some expenses that they will not be incurring, like custodial expenses, maybe some postage and other mailings. So annualized, when you offset the two, maybe it's a $60,000 loss if indeed they're closed for the entire time period. I asked Greg if he anticipated revenues from the virtual performances, and he really didn't know at this point whether they would be significant. It really wasn't going to make up the 85,000, but maybe something will trickle in, but we're not really betting on that right now.
Brenda, a question about that, going back to the budget transfers. I noticed that there were 2 transfers for theater safety improvements and theater production equipment. That even though there's nothing going on in the theater, those capital expenses continue?
Yes, they're going ahead with, exactly. They are going ahead with any renovations and using the downtime to improve the theater.
Okay.
So they're not right. So it is a
And
good
is-
opportunity for those things to happen.
And is any of the production equipment related to things they may post online or virtually?
I don't recall, or I honestly.
I don't think it was.
I know there's even things like they replaced carpet and things that, it's easy to do when people weren't around.
Sure. Good point.
Exactly, right. And they're going ahead, I think, with their marketing manager. So, plans are full steam ahead for when they open again. In our court, those revenues are down drastically because of the suspension of parking enforcement for basically the past 6 months and the closure of the court. Year-to-date receipts is January, June, July, and August is about 7,400 versus 40,000 for the same period last year. I asked them down there, Donna as well, is it a function of just not having the fines, or is it the court backlog? And we can anticipate, when the court finally opens, to see that backlog opening and resulting in some revenues. And there's really not that much of a backlog. There are some for the traffic enforcement, but not a lot of them. Not a surge to expect. So they've postponed the hiring of an assistant at this time to help offset that deficit and the fact that court really hasn't been active. They've been doing, I guess, virtual court appearances. And then Recreation and Park, they've been so busy. The story there really has been to keep the parks and the trails safe and opening the program safely, reformatting the programs, taking in a new software program at the same time to help with the registration, so it's online, and also with the seniors and the families in need. So they've been busier than ever there, and they're trying to find new programs and to be as creative as possible to seeking alternative programs. So you had mentioned renting of the track space. That's something that they're doing now. And so they're slowly returning. They have fixed expenses for their personnel, but when it comes to the programs and those revenues, one offsets the other. So the fact that the camp was not held this year and those revenues are down, those program expenditures were also not expended. So it's kind of a balancing there. So as a result, you're really not experiencing any losses to the village because you didn't have the revenue or the expense. We do have some unemployment to be paid. Most of the claims are really relatively small. A few other ones, primarily in the recreation department, are ongoing. I can see right now our liability is about 60,000. There's the basic unemployment, and then there's an extension people can file for. The federal government has pledged to cover 1/2 of those unemployment costs. I haven't paid out the 60,000, but that's what I'm aware of in our liability. We do have many COVID-related expenditures that we're tracking. Since the pandemic began, we've had about $190,000 in expenses. It's all the PPE that was ordered, cleaning, modifications to our workspace, security in Village Hall. Those were all added. We needed additional laptops for people working remotely. So that's all inclusive is in the 190,000. Of the 190, 73,000 were expenses in the prior fiscal year. So we've realized those expenses and that loss, so to speak, in last year's financials. So right now it's about $116,000 unfunded expenses in our operating budget. We've applied to FEMA for reimbursement and we're still awaiting a determination on that. I'll go on to Hurricane Isaias. Well, it's not COVID, it's an expenditure, basically unfunded expense to the village. It's about $100,000 that was submitted to FEMA. Well, not directly to FEMA, but as an estimate to the county. But at this point, they haven't declared the hurricane a FEMA event as yet. So we'll know maybe by next week whether there's a declaration. Most of that is overtime, a lot of it, and equipment, use of equipment that gets calculated into that. We'll get some maybe insurance money. We've made a claim to them, but it's a minimal as opposed to the 100,000 because insurance will not cover overtime or equipment. It'll cover contracted items like tree removal. And so basically, you know, looking at these things, there are a lot of moving parts. It's early to say how it really ends up. If we get the FEMA reimbursement for the families in need, all those meals and the PPE, that would help tremendously. We'll see about the hurricane declaration for FEMA. On some sides of the equation, we have pluses like in our mortgage tax, sales taxes right now holding steady for the village. And some revenues will be down and not capturable like the theater revenue. Some of the court revenue, those will not be realized. And the recreation right now is really a balanced area. So fortunately, we don't rely heavily on any of those items that I touched upon. And it's just reassuring to know that we enter the situation in a very good financial position. I had, you know, shared with the board that I was anticipating a very strong to the end of the financial year. And the draft audit shows this is a unassigned fund balance of over $5.5 million. And we went up $728,000 over last year in the unassigned. And that's after even putting towards the current year budget, $380,000 so that we could keep our tax rate flat. So I think that was a good way to go into this. So it's just, I wanted to keep you apprised of where we stood and if there were concerns that we were really ongoing monitoring of all these areas. But at this point, I think we'll let things play out the way they are. It's, you know, going as well as it can. So if you have any questions on any of those items, I'm happy to answer them.
No, thank you.
Yeah, it was very helpful.
Thank you, Brenda.
You're welcome. Okay.
The village attorney's report.
I don't have one.
Well, one thing I think Connie and I wanted to mention was Drew Fixall, the long-term, I think since 2006, mayor of Tarrytown, announced this week that he was stepping down, and we just wanted to wish Drew all the best. You know, he's been a good partner with Irvington and the Greenberg villages, and he's always been a tremendous colleague who's generous with his time and his ideas. So just want to wish him the best with, you know, spending more time with his family, both his, I think, elderly parents and then his children, both his daughters, I believe, who both recently had babies. So he's going to be doing some senior care and some daycare. So he's very busy, but we just wanted to wish him the best. But now we will open it up to public comment. We had a couple hands up. I think one person had to leave, but
So Leola?
it's fun.
Hi, I sometimes have audio issues. Can you hear me okay?
You sound good, and the picture looks like you were having fun near the beach or something.
Oh, great. Gee, I'm sorry. I don't know how to figure out how to show myself for real, but yeah, rock climbing. So thank you. I actually tried to unmute myself during other parts of the public comment, but maybe this is a little bit of a different gas leaf blower request, and that is if we have someone who's not enforcing parking and things, or really in general because it's a law, I'd like to see more enforcement of our current gas leaf blower law. There are constant violations of the decibel levels, the use, the time, the period, the number. So there's a lot of violations that people see around regularly. And I think that our parking enforcement or other police need to be more proactive in enforcing the law we currently have on the books. So I'd like to ask if you could engage the police chief in understanding at least the current law. And I realize you're considering a ban, and much like Larchmont, that would be terrific. But I think we really have need to enforce the law that's on the books right now.
Okay.
And then the other is, and I also couldn't, my internet dropped out, and you've already voted on it, but I'd like to ask the Matheson Park landscaping work that's been approved, and I don't know how much of it is done, but I think in our service to the children, this project has had a very big carbon footprint impact on a very normally pretty low impact park. And so I hope that the plantings will be the type that will mitigate erosion, that will, kind of keep the air clean, all those sort of things, much the way the O'Hara Nature Center has its gardens, where there are rain gardens, rain swales, instead of built environments that have to handle drainage. The plant life provides cooling and air, and it's a dramatic difference. Last year's event, I attended this year's, the weather was different, but last year's, it was so hot in the village where there's paid services and a lot of mowed lawn. And then up at O'Hara Nature Center, it was gorgeous and much cooler on a very hot 90-something degree day. It makes a dramatic impact, and it's really helps us be more resilient to rising seas and all these sorts of things. And so whatever landscaping is done, I'd ask that it be native plants and trees. I also ask that you really think twice about irrigation for grass planting. Those are the kinds of things that need to be yesterday. You don't put irrigation in anymore. All of these things are the kind of measures we need to do to have a livable future and avoid climate disaster. So I really ask to be very thoughtful and natural about the plantings and the maintenance. You know, it should be low maintenance items that really benefit our children's future. And the other topic that I wanted to bring up is also, and Connie, thank you for the mention of the kiosks about our local businesses, which I'm so concerned about all Main Street businesses and want to keep them thriving, and it's difficult in the COVID environment. So it's really great to capture people who come to the area for the shared use path. And I'm thrilled to hear that. Now, once though people do start coming down Route 9 into our village more from biking on the path, we need to be ready. And there's an incredibly good proposal that you all know for safer walking and biking and more safer car transportation also along Route 9. The proposed plan actually has fewer car accidents, and it also facilitates more people coming to our local businesses when they feel safe about walking and biking along Route 9. It benefits our community too, because the east side can come across much more easily when they can cross safely and or bike down. or even drive more safely. Fewer car accidents statistically happen when these kinds of designs are employed. So I want to remind you of that, encourage you, because the bikes will come and we should be ready, and our community might as well benefit from it at the same time. I'm probably more than 3 minutes, so I think I'll end here.
All right, you waited to the end, so I gave you an extra minute.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jacina, I know you, let me,
I think she said that she had to step off, but
oh, maybe, okay.
if she's still here, then we can put her on. But-
She did send a message in the Q&A, so I don't
Yeah.
know if you want to summarize it or
Sure.
you see that?
Would it be possible to see an overview of how many trees have been cut down due to reconstruction of the playground in Madison Park, and how many and what kind of replanted to replace them? I know, I believe there is a replanting plan, so we probably,
Oh, sure.
it's probably on the website somewhere already, but I know they tried to preserve any of the large trees. I think they had a couple that took down that were actually not in good shape, but I don't think that any healthy large trees had to be removed. So at least that was the plan. So, but we can definitely find out where that is. Also, I'd like to ask the BOT to consider the mounting evidence regarding the hazards of leaf blowers. These include public health hazards when gases and particulates are inhaled by crews, residents, and passers-by. Damage to the environment is strong air currents, desolate soil and plants, and destroy insect and wildlife habitat. Crews are exposed to health hazards, often without knowledge, protection, or power to object. They said, sorry, couldn't stay longer. So I think we're aware of all of those things. As always, we're trying to weigh different parties' concerns about different things. So eventually all leaf blowers, I think, all gas powered, or at least 2-stroke, will be gone. I already heard about 4-stroke coming in, which are now have the same or less emissions than automobiles. So that's a step in the right direction. So between that and electric, I think we probably won't have our current type of leaf blowers much longer, regardless of what we do. So anybody else? Otherwise, I will move on to review of action items, Larry.
I didn't have anything specifically that came up.
I did not either.
I was going to mention one thing, Larry, if I may. At least what I saw coming back and forth from GPTF was there was some question about whether they wanted to reorder some love them and leave them signs. So it's getting to be the point that I don't even know if the printer that we used in the Midwest is still functioning at this moment.
Right.
But,
Okay. I'll go back and review that, and we can order locally. It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. So I'll make a motion to adjourn this meeting. If I can get a second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So Larry, are we staying on here, or are we going to a different?
You're staying, yes, you are staying on here. I'm going to promote the Bernsteins to be panelists.
What should I call the hearing to order, or has it?
Yeah, so, well, either way, I mean, but
Okay.
yes. And then,
We can do that while you're promoting them. How's that?
yeah, exactly.
I will make a motion to hold a public hearing on the appeal of Kenneth and Deborah Bernstein of an architectural review board decision concerning 10 North Ecker Street. If I can have a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I thought we were doing Marianne first. No? Advice of counsel? Sorry.
No,
That's what you sent around in the email earlier.
I think if we need
No.
to, we can.
I said,
At
yeah,
the end,
well, no, there's a couple of things. So, yeah,
and
we're,
then if you need it, yeah.
right, advice of counsel for those matters, any other matters, but not talking about this matter would be after this.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, Marianne, should we cover quickly the recusals? Just to announce those?
Yeah, I think you should just state that both Connie and Larry Lonke are recused on this.
Right.
And won't be participating.
Right,
Why
so
they
I'm
were
actually going,
recused?
I'm sorry?
I was just curious why they were recused.
Well, on both of, under the code, if you have any professional relationship with somebody, or possibly, you should recuse yourself. And Larry, look, I don't know if Connie and Larry want to explain. I don't think they need to. We discussed it. They raised it with me. We talked with the rest of the board. And I don't think we need to say more now.
Okay.
So they're going to drop off, or they're going to stay on?
Well, I was, if I can do it, I was going to
Okay.
try to turn them into attendees. I'm not sure. Yes, I can actually. So I'm going to change your roles to be attendees. You can obviously watch as a member of the audience, but you won't be on the panel here for both of you. So just give me a second for that. All right. Well, it looks like Connie dropped off. Okay. Okay. All right. So, I mean, I'm not sure there's necessarily an order to this, but this is an appeal of Kenneth and Deborah Bernstein for their property at 10 North Ecker Street. And it's an appeal of an architectural review board decision. So the Bernsteins had submitted papers prior to this, which we had attached to this agenda. But if you want to go ahead and say anything, make a presentation, however you want to handle this, go right ahead. Right.
We have all read, Ken and Deborah, your summary. I think all of us walked by your house. We watched the ARB meeting. So hopefully we're up to speed, but I don't want to, I'm happy to hear from you as well. That's just the background for you.
Well, first of all, it's nice to see everyone. I did prepare a little presentation, not knowing if everyone was up to speed or not, but I think, so I'll just go through that. But
Sure.
I invite you, everyone, to interrupt me if you want and, ask questions along the way. Basically, we are appealing a denial of our application to the ARB to change the windows in our house. We had old drafty, rattling windows. We wanted to replace them. We thought that would be a pretty seamless process, and lo and behold, we were denied. And I gather we're the first appeal to this board of an ARB decision. The standards are in sections 9.1 and 9.7 of the code. There's a little bit of the back and forth between those sections, but basically there are a couple of questions. Is the application detrimental to the desirability, property values, or development of the surrounding area? We don't believe it is detrimental, our new windows. Or is the application not in keeping with the harmonious development of the district? Again, we believe it is perfectly in keeping. The code does in 9.7 state that decision by the ARB cannot be based on personal preference as to taste or choice of architectural style. It doesn't say you must replace any alterations to your property with the same historic materials. It doesn't say you have to replace with the same exact style. It's a general standard, and that alteration should be in keeping with our historic neighborhood as a whole, and we believe it is. We are replacing windows. We're not demolishing a building. We're not changing the structure of our house in any way. We're not enlarging any window openings. We're not changing the shape of any windows. We're simply popping out old windows and putting in new windows. Our house is not a specimen to any particular period. It's really is, as the ARB indicated in their findings of fact, it's an amalgamation of a number of different styles. And the windows we're replacing are, to our knowledge, not even original. I think we and the ARB both estimated the windows we're replacing are probably put in around the 1950s or 60s or so. The ARB's central objection, at least as we heard it during the hearing, was that we are not replacing our windows with windows that have true divided light. I think the ARB would have preferred that our new windows have individual small panes of glass that are separated by wooden grills. And our preference, we selected, we like the look of grills, but we wanted, and we selected to put them between the glass, within the glass. Essentially, the Andersen windows we put in have 2 full panes, and they put the grill in between the glass. It's not, you know, numerous individual panes within squares throughout. We want it to be within the glass because it's one, it's easier to clean the windows that way. 2, we had an issue in the past with our dog who chewed the grills, or I think they're called muntins, on the interior, and this way we don't have those muntins. It also, as we're told by Andersen, they won't rot and they never have to be painted. So we had reasons for choosing what we chose, and we think we're pleased with our decision. We walked around the neighborhood before we picked new windows, and we went again a couple of weeks ago. And originally we went to make sure that the windows we were putting in would be consistent with the neighborhood. And we found overwhelmingly that they were. And that's why we picked what we did. We attached to the memo we submitted many examples of windows within the historic district downtown that do not have quote unquote true divided light. There are many examples. If you look at Exhibit B to our memo, we included, I don't know, a dozen or so of those examples.
That was
Some,
just the ones that had the 6 on top and 1 on the bottom, but there were many others that.
right. Yeah, I mean, there were lots of others too. We just had a selection, and right, we put in our memo ones that were within the glass that also had the 6 over 1 or 6 grills on top and 1 pane on the bottom. So, and some of those I think appear to be newly renovated as well. So we do believe that is fully in keeping with the character of the neighborhood. We also note that the design guide that the Board of Trustees adopted, I mean, there were references to the design guide in the ARB's decision. The design guide is supposed to be a useful tool. It is not intended to be a regulatory document. That's specifically stated by this board in the resolution that adopted it. And the design guide also says the recommendations in that design guide are to be balanced against the cost to and preferences of the property owners. I mean, in terms of costs, this project was a $37,000 project, not insignificant. We chose good windows. We got a deal because of COVID, which is why we said, hey, this would be a good time to do it. We got a really good quote. But we, you know, last week we tried to figure out, we've been trying to figure out what it would have cost if we got these true divided light windows. And I finally got a quote from someone. I was told it would be between $80,000 and $100,000. So 37 was enough for us to spend. There's no way we could or want to spend $80,000 to $100,000, which is what the ARB ideally would want us to do with our windows. Also, you know, in terms of the recommendations of the design guide being balanced, again, the costs and the preferences, we prefer the grills within the glass. I mean, that's our preference. We have good reasons for wanting it.
We also like the material that we chose because it doesn't have to be painted. It doesn't chip. Our windows are they're moldy and they're rotting and they're bugs. And we didn't want the wood, which would have that same problem again. And if it was going to be a wood window that was going to cost less, then it's a cheap window. So this was a better option for us.
I would just note also in the findings of fact, there were references to the fact that the ARB would have preferred that we also maintain the 6/6 style we had instead of 6/1, and that we kept the sashes white instead of black. And I really do believe those are red herrings. We indicated why in the memo, but the historic guide itself, shows examples and cites approvingly of 6/1, and there are, tons of examples in the historic district of the 6/1 pattern, which we included also at that Exhibit B. And there are many, many examples of black or dark sashes. We included that as Exhibit C. The historic district guide also indicates that black sashes are historic, and they also recommend them in certain instances. So we've been very happy with the windows. We've only received compliments from our neighbors. I know of at least one neighbor who I think sent an email or so to the board. There may have been some others because we had mentioned this to some of our neighbors. I'm not sure if others did submit or not, but
We got 2 letters, Ken. Stacy Pisani, as well as Marcus and Dora Witt.
okay, that's great.
Nice.
So,
They're across from us and next.
Yeah. So they said they look directly onto your house.
Right.
Yeah, Brian, you should probably summarize those letters because I think they should be part of the record.
Sure, I can read them. They're pretty similar.
Well, so I just had one last point. Which
Take all the time you want, Ken.
No, the last point is at the hearing before the ARB, as you would have seen if you watched it, it was not a 5-0 decision or anything like that. It was a 2-2 decision. There was a 5th member of the board who wanted to abstain. And then the ARB asked what would happen if it was a tie vote, and Ed was on and said, well, if it's a tie, then it gets approved. You have to have a majority to disapprove. And so there was further discussion among the ARB, and the member who was going to abstain decided that she would change her vote to deny. And so I think, honestly, they wanted to just kick it to your board to make the decision. They didn't want to set a bad precedent. And so here we are, and it's been a really disappointing experience for us. But that's it for my little presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Should I start with reading the 2 letters maybe? And then, first one, hello board. My wife and I are neighbors with the Bernsteins on North Ecker. I understand they're appealing installation of new windows for their house. We just wanted to throw our support for them as neighbors. The new windows have improved the curb appeal of their house and therefore our street, which we view as a very positive upgrade. From what I understand, their old windows weren't historic, just inefficient. As a neighbor, we view this as a positive. Their house is burning much less fuel and therefore better for the town's air quality and looks better on our street. Best, Marcus and Dora Witt. The other one, dear Mr. Smith, some pleasantries. It was come to my attention that Ken and Deborah Bernstein are in a dispute with the ARB and the Board of Trustees regarding the windows of their house at 10 North Ecker Street. I'm the homeowner of 11 North Ecker Street, directly across from Ken and Deborah's house. Both my husband and I feel that improvements the Bernsteins have made in their property are attractive, including the windows, and uphold the historic feel of the house and of the neighborhood. My house is also participating property in the historic district, and I see nothing objectionable about the windows at 10 North Astor Street. In fact, I find the dark grills to be quite attractive and harmonious with the other colors of the house. In my opinion, neither the color of the grills nor the configuration of the panes distract from the authenticity of the property as a historic district home. My family's been living across from the Bernsteins since 2016, and I've been impressed with the way that they have been beautifying their property. I feel that their house adds to the quality of the neighborhood. Like the Bernsteins, I love Irvington and the Main Street area, particularly for the quaint old houses that have been so well kept. I believe that by keeping their old house in such good shape, Ken and Deborah should not be punished for their investment, but commended for improving the quality of life of Irvington residents in the downtown area. Asking you to urge the ARB and the Board of Trustees to accept the Bernstein's appeal, which should grant approval for the new windows.
Very nice.
So those are the 2 letters we received, I guess, over the weekend. Mark and Janice, do we have questions or? I mean, I feel like this is one of the issues. I feel like I'm studying for a final exam. I've gotten a lot of information on this one.
Yes, and as you mentioned, I think all of us read all of the materials. We watched the video of the ARB hearing. I not only stood across from your house, I walked up and down a lot of the streets of the historic district because they're all dead ends, so you don't tend to do that, right? And I was very impressed by the lovely aromas that were coming wafting through the village on Sunday afternoon. So a lot of people were obviously cooking. I have a few thoughts and comments, but Mark, you're the liaison to the ARB. Do you want to comment first?
Why don't you go ahead, then I'll comment. It's fine.
Okay. It seems to me what this comes down to is that there are two related but distinct issues. Without question, and you yourselves now acknowledge that you did need a permit for this work. And nobody is saying you tried to pull a fast one. I mean, this was about as out in the open as you could possibly do. You weren't putting in a basement lap pool, you know, you were doing this by necessity in the open air. And the only reason it really got flagged was because you asked to put the ladder on the Recreation Department property. So there was no subterfuge here. You are long-term community residents. You both have businesses in the village. This is not somebody who came in to do a quick rehab and sell a house for a profit. You are invested in this village, as we all are, and as is our volunteer board, our ARB board, who serves and does a tremendous amount of work on a volunteer basis. And not for nothing, I did notice that your part of their hearing started 2 hours after their meeting started, so they were putting in time. So the two related issues: the village code clearly requires that you get a permit for renovations, including window replacement in the historic district, and the application must be submitted to and approved by the ARB. You were also quite correct that the design code is a useful tool, and that was a quote from the report, not a regulatory document. So the permit application requires submission to the ARB. So the two things are connected. There's a mandatory piece, make a permit, and then you have to go before the ARB. Even though the ARB cannot impose its wishes on you, that is part of the process. And it provides the opposite design guide. This is how the ARB gets to provide guidance, which could be consult with you, educate you, persuade you, give you alternate, give you some insight into the design elements that they prefer and why they prefer them. But the bottom line is that as long as you're not violating other aspects of the building code, your preferences in terms of appearance, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of not wanting your dog to eat the insides of your window anymore, in terms of how the light comes in, that is what carries, not the ARB's determination. Having said that, however, I do appreciate some of the comments made by ARB members that wishing neighbors would kind of pay attention to the fact that a lot of work and effort went into development of the design guide and to the elements that went into that design guide. Is beautiful. It's a beautiful document. It lays out everything so carefully, and people's really heart is in this. Their devotion to this community, to the historic district. So I want to also say I appreciate your frustration at how long and complicated this process has been, but I also appreciate the frustration of the ARB members for having been in a position where they couldn't offer the guidance that they are in a unique position to do. This is unfortunate. I also understand their point about precedent. We clearly do not want to encourage a situation where people can just, do something and say, oops, I forgot to get the permit. I'm not suggesting that was your intention at all, but there is some precedent to this. So I think their bottom line was, well, the decision, I believe this is pretty much a quote, that the decision was taken out of our hands so that it goes to the BOT. So in other words, you didn't get the permit, but you also didn't engage in the mandatory process of meeting with the ARB, even though they couldn't compel you to put in the kind of windows they recommended. Does that sound like a fair summary to you?
Yeah, I believe so.
So in balance, you know, a couple of the factors that I consider is that the home is not in the original condition, as you pointed out, old windows. It has aluminum siding. There was some discussion about whether framing changes are required, but certainly you have indicated that this was pop in, pop out. The new windows is simply replacing the old. And it would seem to me, since 3 of them haven't been installed yet, if there really is any question about that, we have an opportunity to see. You know, there they are. Poke out the old one, here's the hole, poke in the new one. Okay, if it's not a reframing, that's going to be evident.
No reframing.
Yeah, no, so you said, but that was a question that was raised, so I wanted to address that. So well, I don't want to say recommendations yet. Those are just my comments. So Mark, why don't you go ahead and Brian with your reflections and comments.
So, you know, it's a good summary of the issues. It's a complex situation. I do want to reframe a little bit of it in that the sense that there are several members of the ARB, in fact, who said that, you know, things like the black sash and the, you know, 6/1 was not a showstopper for them. I think that the issue really came down to, again, the precedents and the procedural issue more than anything else. You know, I did go out and look around. Personal is not for the internal muntins, whatever they're called, sashes, internal breaks, because, for instance, as I walked around on the street, I could see that there was a solid pane of glass on the outside, which sort of breaks the illusion of the window, of the individual lights. That's a personal opinion. And, you know, that really doesn't enter into my thinking at all in terms of the real issue here. And the issue here is that one of procedures and permitting. And what bothers me is that we have to make it clear not only what the requirement in the historic district is, but also, you know, there's always been this kind of, I'm going to call it a soft back door to permits, where you can avoid going before certain boards if it is, in fact, a repair or replacement in kind. And I know in particular, Ken, you made the argument that the windows were replacement in kind because they were fitting into the same openings without any kind of additional carpentry work beyond whatever shims were required, you know, to seal it off. And that kind of thing to seal off the window frames. But the point is they actually are not exact replacements because every aspect of them are different than the original windows. They're 6/1 as opposed to 6/6. You know, they're black. I happen to think it looks good. That's not my problem. But my issue is that every aspect about the window, except for its dimension, was different than the original windows. So how you came to, that bothers me, because how you came to the conclusion that they were 1-for-1 replacement, you know, they weren't. So that's where I'm coming down. I'm not saying it was willful. I'm just saying that we have to be clear that to the rest of the community what this kind of you know, procedural shortcut is really about, for want of a better word. The second thing that bothers me in general is that just within the last month, I'm going to say the last month, maybe it was the last 6 weeks, there was another property at 26 North Dutcher who were replacing 5 windows, 2 in the front, 3 on the side, with identical windows in terms of everything. The number of lights, the color, everything else was all going in identical, but they were stopped because they were told basically at the last minute that it was a demolition by definition in the historic district. And if you look at the demolition code, the definition of substantial modification talks about changes to the facade of a visible facade. The issue I see is that the building department has come to see this as interpret this as including window changes, that it they were considering that to be a significant modification of the facade. So that was the argument the building inspector was making to the ARB about 26 North Dutcher with only 5 windows. I'm not sure why the same argument wasn't put forth about your window operation, because if replacing 5 windows is considered demolition in the historic district, then certainly replacing 21 windows would be considered the same.
Well, I don't think they weren't getting a permit. And after what happened with our board meeting, I think they were told, you better go get a permit.
They were coming before the ARB to get a permit. That's correct.
That they were told they had to at the last minute.
No, that's not what they were told. I'm sorry.
No.
They were told they had to notice at the last minute. Notification is only a requirement of something like demolition. They were coming in to get approved, their window choice approved for a permit. And at the last minute, right before the meeting,
No, I understand.
they were told they needed to notice because it was demolition.
I understand now.
The ARB, in fact, did override that and approve their permit. So be that as it may, I feel like internally the village is not consistent in its reading of what is and what isn't a significant alteration of a facade. I personally feel, and I think it's something the BOT should actually weigh in on an adjustment, that changing windows is not a change, is not a demolition. You know, that seems on the face of it to be absurd. But luckily you guys weren't faced with that, because the only recourse in demolition without a permit is to actually reinstall or restore the situation to the original condition. So that's something you guys don't have to face up to. But I still have this problem that what we do in terms of the greater community, because this is not the first time that folks have come forward and have basically, you know, kind of don't take this wrong, okay, but I'm just going to use some language and I don't know how to say it politically correctly. You know, it's kind of the hardship excuse that, you know, well, we already bought whatever it was, $30,000 worth of, went down on, I'm thinking of down on Lower Main Street. We already bought all these windows. So, you know, don't make us, we can't get a refund on them, you know, so don't make us eat the cost. So there've been situations like that. That was right about when the historic district legislation, in fact, was enacted. It was right during that transition period. So I know that things like building department procedures weren't necessarily updated fully, et cetera. So anyways, I think it's a very complex problem. I think that the windows ultimately look good and they serve a function environmentally. They do maintain, I think, an acceptable look to the neighborhood. And I think they're handsome in the house. But I still got this but there. I got a but because there was a legal breach. And I don't feel like we can just walk away from that. So the only thing, this is the final thing, the only thing I could see is that there are, you know, things in the code that basically allow for fines for moving ahead with work without a permit. I think that's the only option that I could see that the board has, unless someone has thought more deeply over the last few weeks about it than I have.
Well, I like to think I thought about it deeply, but that's the only thing I came up with also, Mark. I mean, to me, all this, and Janice, I think you had you had a perfect summary of findings for us, so I won't have to go through that. But to me, it all comes down to basically one issue: are the windows acceptable? And you know, to me, the ARB was worried about setting a precedent that, you know, that we would allow, you know, someone just didn't get a permit, put up windows, and then, you know, now why go to the ARB? Why go through all the problems if you're just going to be able to do whatever you want without a permit, and then come over and just say, you know, that this happened before, you know, Bernstein's did it. But to me, a lot of that, you know, we're not really setting a precedent if the windows are acceptable to us. And I think, you know, again, listening to the ARB meeting, it sounded to me like, you know, if it wasn't unanimous, it was probably 4-1 that they thought the windows were acceptable. Maybe not their favorite windows, but to me, again, it's a guideline where I'm not sure if there would have been a change if they had gone before and they said 6/6 is what we want and we don't want it inside the glass and those types of things. Because at the end of the day, it is a guideline. And if Ken and Deborah said, I'm tired of my dog eating them, so we're putting it between the glass. And my dogs have eaten several of mine, so I wish I had thought of it. But
Why they're called muttons.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that is the biggest issue. Then what else is there, Mark? And I think that you're right. It's similar. I mean, it's not as bad as doing plumbing or electrical work without a permit, in my opinion, because there's not so many safety issues. If you have leaky windows, you're probably back where you were with your 1950s windows, but you're probably not going to die of it. So I think it's less bad than some other things that don't have permits, but I think we do have to look at that. What can the penalty be for not getting, or the usual course if you get a permit after the fact. But I think before we have any kind of ruling, I think we want to open it up to the public and have any public comment per our procedure for this first.
Well, before we do that, Brian, do we want to hear what the fines could conceivably be according to code? I think both Larry and Marianne have discussed this, but it's probably good for everyone to know, because I'm not sure if I'm totally clear on it myself. What I understand is something like $250 per offense each day. So the question that for the first time offense, that's not a repeat that happened on the property 6 months later, there's a different base rate. But what I'm not sure about is, does that mean, is it per permit or is it per window? I'm assuming it probably means per permit. And the second thing is, what does per day mean? When does that counter start and when does it stop? So those are the kinds of questions I have as to really understanding the significance of the fine itself.
Well, as I've said before, I don't do enforcement. I don't enforce the code at all. So I'm not sure how they do the per day. But it wouldn't be per window. I mean, I would think that the entire replacement of windows would be the one thing. And then I'm just, first of all, I'm not sure how the prosecutor handles that, or the building inspector handles that, whoever requests the fine, and I'm not sure how the judge does it. So I really can't help you out there. The one other thing, and Larry pointed this out, and understand, this board can't impose the fine. It has to be imposed by the court. You could make a recommendation, to the court.
So Marianne, the way I envisioned it working without knowing anything would be, if we do approve it, we turn it over to the building department and then have it run its course to get the proper permits and whatever associated fines.
Right. And well, yes, there's two parts here. One is they would have to do that, and their building permit fee would be doubled whatever it usually is. Let's say it would be $700. It would be doubled to $1,400 because they're coming in after the fact. That's in the fees section.
That was my understanding of how it works.
Pardon?
That was my understanding of how it works.
Right, but that's just done by the building department. But if you wanted a violation issued so that they got what Mark was talking about, so that they got a fine in court, then you would have to ask the code enforcement officer. In this case, it would be the building inspector to file a violation, and then that violation is what goes through court. And
so, Larry, can you give any insight as to when it says every day that the violation exists? Do you know what what would be bracketing that?
No, I don't have the language in front of me, but Marianne, do you have the code there?
Yeah, it is. It says $250 per day.
But there's more to it than that.
Yeah, but not. Yeah, I do. Let me read it.
There was a maximum, if I recall.
No, it was a maximum of the per day cost was maxed out at 1,000. There wasn't a maximum on the daily run.
Okay. For the first offense, you should be, if there's any violation of the code, and the code would be doing the work without getting a permit. Okay, and you to be liable to a civil penalty for the first offense of not less than 250 nor more than 500. So it can be up to $500 for each day or part thereof during which such violation continues. In addition, shall pay all costs and expenses incurred by the village in determining such violation.
So let me just ask a clarifying question. We have to recommend that a violation be issued, correct? That's one of the things we have.
Well, I suppose the building inspector could do it on his own. I mean, you wouldn't have to, but if you want to, yes, you could.
But we
can't
don't have to. Okay. And it's in the code that a delay in obtaining the building permit means the fee is doubled, right?
Yes, that just happens automatically.
Okay.
That's just between the buildings.
So that just happens automatically. We could leave it at that. We could not recommend any other violation be issued. And then it's up to the building department if they decide in their wisdom that they want to go ahead and do that.
That's one way to do it.
Okay. In terms of how things run by day, I would say that.
Barry, did you disagree?
No, I was only going to point out that typically the prosecution process is costly and the outcome is uncertain because it's decided by a judge. So it's not like saying, well, I want a $500 fine and it's going to happen. We may prosecute. It may cost us, $500 to $1,000 to do it, and the judge may issue zero penalty. We don't know. So the fee structure was set to be double in order to account for the added costs of processing, such situations when someone fails to get a permit and then comes in after the fact. There's added costs on the village to process and catch up with that process. So that was intended to account for the added costs. We wouldn't typically prosecute a violation because of the cost involved and the uncertain outcome unless the situation was large enough to warrant the prosecution. I can't tell you what the building inspector would do or not do. I don't think this is a case that would rise to the level that they would seek out prosecution. Obviously, you have the ability to direct and demand that it's done, but I don't think that he would.
They're going to do it on their own.
I don't think he would seek a formal violation and subsequent prosecution in order to exact a fine in this particular instance.
And not just clear that again, for the reason.
Because of the nature of because of the nature and size of the violation, and obviously the compliance is what we're after here.
Right, and the violation has no net negative effect environmentally or aesthetically for all intents and purposes.
Yeah, I mean,
safety or otherwise, yeah.
Yeah, we can come up with lots of different hypothetical scenarios where a violation and a subsequent prosecution will be very important, to pursue. I don't think this is one of them, just my own, I'm not the building inspector, but I don't think this is one of them.
No, and I would completely agree. That's why I was asking just for clarification. I think, unfortunately, the additional fee of application is just, we can't not acknowledge that the process wasn't fulfilled the way.
No, that will be done. No,
Right.
no, if we get to the point where a permit is approved and issued, the fee will be
Double.
double
Right,
fee,
right.
which is
And
what
I'm
the-
just saying that seems to me to be the appropriate but sufficient and unfortunate result of this error in judgment, which nobody, again, is suggesting that you were trying to do something underhanded.
I think it makes sense. And my only area that I feel doesn't get resolved is the precedence area. I feel like one of the things that I'd like to say is I think the ARB actually did the right thing in this case in order to protect the integrity of the process or the integrity of the design guidance. to say, you know what, we want the, the next level up to decide. I think that was a viable decision on their part. But I'm concerned about, is there any other sort of messaging we need to do to ensure more people are aware of? I can tell you, there was always people that give the comment about, oh, I didn't know I needed a building permit. Even just in general conversations with people, there's a lot of ignorance of process, because I guess people don't get involved in renovation a lot. So.
Oh, Mark, we run into the same thing all the time. We have, 15 hearings on a particular issue, and we're just about to take a vote, and people pop up saying, I didn't know about this. So
why are you hiding it?
right. So communicate, people's obligation to inform themselves of requirements or inform themselves of what's happening is an ongoing issue. But the Bernsteins are here only for their particular situation, not for our philosophical position here. But I think you understand that that is the way it works with the additional fee. But I certainly would not want to see any further penalty for you than this. And I think the discouragement of the precedent established is that if you do something like this, you're going to have to pay double fee for the building permit, which is not small on top of what was already spent for the windows. And it's unfortunate, but I don't think we have any wiggle room in this. And I think, it's an unfortunate, but probably appropriate result.
So
Well,
Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
do we see if anybody in the public has any comments, that we can talk again?
If anyone has any comments, just raise your hand. And
I would say something in addition.
Sure.
Well, just in terms of some of the points that Mark raised and, notice to the community, our situation, I am, familiar with the historic district. I was on the board with you guys a number of years ago. It's not an excuse, but it's not as if we, built an addition without thinking, oh, we have to get a building permit. I mean, if we were doing anything structural, I certainly knew, of course, I'm going to go dig into it. We're going to end up hiring an architect, and I'm going to make sure we comply with everything. Here, I mean, it just seemed to me, oh, we wanted to replace the windows, which are drafty, and it was during COVID, and there were deals out there. It just, it just seems like the kind of thing that you wouldn't naturally say, oh, I have to go get ARB approval to change the windows. I'm not saying Mark's wrong, that the color was changed, et cetera, but it's not a major structural endeavor. So,
I mean, and I know, we moved into the village 12 years ago. We lived in another house. We downsized to be where it was affordable, which really no longer is. But, we bought this house, we love it, but we didn't buy it kind of planning to restore it. We bought it to live in it. But, in terms of building permits, I mean, we have one shower. I know if we add a shower, it's going to cost me a ton of money, because I'm going to have to get an architect. I'm going to have to design it. I know I need building permits. I would not, and we live 5 people with one shower. But the windows, we really didn't think that because we weren't actually cutting the house that it required anything. And I understand that there are fines, and I understand you want to do something in order to make it so people don't do this. But the people who are gonna, people are still gonna do things behind your back, because they try. And I wonder if when someone buys a house in town, that maybe there needs to be something that goes to the real estate agents that says, look, you're looking in the historic district, and there are certain things that you're going to need to know, because if you ever want to change it, you're going to have to be held to a higher standard than if you want to buy in another area of town. And if you buy in another area of town, you still have to do these things, require permits. And I think people don't know. But
And just to be clear, a lot of the things, regardless of historic district or not, have to go before the ARB for review.
Yeah, I'm saying people don't know, unfortunately. But, I mean, certain things you always know, you do electric, you do this and that, but yeah.
It doesn't look like anyone raised their hand. So what's the actual procedure here, Larry? Do we close the hearing and vote? Do we, I mean, I assume that we're ready. Or I just make a motion to vote myself and then see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can consider the hearing closed since no one raised their hand. And then if you feel that you need to deliberate any further or whatever, but
I think I'm ready.
to vote. Yeah.
I just want to say that I think there's issues that have come up that we need to address as a board separately, not in terms of the Bernstein's appeal, but just outside of that, we need to look at a couple of these areas to see if some fine tuning is required, clarification tuning in the wording and the implementation of some of this.
Okay.
That's all.
We can circle back separately on that and get
Yeah,
organized to see what's on your mind.
So if we consider the hearing closed, I will make a motion to approve the application. If I can get a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is that a
Okay,
yes,
so-
Mark? Okay.
I said aye. Yeah.
I think I
We should-
stepped on it.
So Mary Ann, maybe you can help with the procedural, because I think,
Well, I think there should be I mean, I think you can go ahead and say it was approved and, go to the building department with that if you want. But I do think there should be a written decision. I'll write something up so that in the future, there's a concern about precedent and, you can make that clear in a written decision. So I'll draft a written decision and circulate it to the, to Brian and Janice and Mark, and, you can mark it up.
I think there's a subtle procedural thing here, which is the code.
Oh, yeah, let me look. Yeah, hold on. Let me get it out. Good point. Good point,
Yeah,
Larry.
let's just go through the procedure so we're all on the same page. I see Rick Rizzullo has his hand up, which is he's obviously
Yeah.
the ARB chairman.
Wait, just a minute before
Yeah.
that, though. Let me just see what the process here is. Okay, appeals. If the Board of Trustees, if the Board of Trustees reverses the action of the Board of Architectural Review, it shall remand the application to the Board of Architectural Review for approval and the imposition of reasonable conditions or further action consistent with the decision of the Board of Trustees. If you have anything further to say, I mean, about whether you want any conditions imposed or you don't want conditions imposed, whatever, you should do that. Otherwise, because it says it goes back to them and for approval and the imposition of reasonable conditions or further action consistent with the decision of the Board of Trustees. So if you're to be consistent, you say, it's just a straight out approval, then conditions would not be consistent with that.
Right.
Or
I
maybe-
don't have any additional consistent,
No. Nor do I, no conditions.
I have no conditions either.
Okay, so their vote was to reverse the decision of the ARB. Okay,
Yes.
just be clear about what the
What we actually voted on?
Oh, I see what you mean. Rather than approve the application. Yeah, good call, Larry.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
I was clear
it's
that's what they were doing, but
So yeah, we overturned the denial as opposed to approve the application.
Right. So it's remanded to the ARB and, and that's it. And presumably, as you said, to be consistent with the Board of Trustees, the Board of Trustees didn't impose any other conditions. So it would likely be the case with the ARB, but that's.
Well, I mean, we've talked about this before, but I don't want to see it coming back here again like a bad penny.
I doubt the Bernsteins want to see it back here as either. I think they just would like to get their other 3 windows in and move on here.
Well, I think your rationale and your deliberations were clear. So it was all done in the open and everyone should understand where you're at. So,
Okay.
all right.
Anything else?
Oh, wait, Rick Rizzulo wanted to say something, I
I think
think.
he might have been touching on, let me, Rick, if you're there still. I just wanna
My
make
thing
sure that
says chat.
was- Oh, he put it in chat, okay. Rick,
Yeah, I'm here.
hey, were you touching on that subtle point?
About remaining back to the ARB, yes.
Yeah, okay, good. I thought that might be the case.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right, good.
Great. Thanks,
So we're
Rick.
done- Thanks, Rick. So we're done here tonight then?
Meeting?
I will make a motion to adjourn if I get a second.
But before you adjourn,
Yeah.
just procedurally on that subtle point, I'm just not sure.
What does
Do
that
we have to
mean?
do something affirmatively, or are we now on the agenda for the next ARB meeting, or what happens? If you guys know.
Well, the chairman's on board here. Rick, how do you think we should just handle this?
It really is up to the building department. Our next meeting is Wednesday,
Okay,
and then there won't be one until the last Monday of October. So,
Is that in this week? My understanding was he was out.
who?
He's not in, so
Ed's not in this week.
Well,
that's fine. Rick, how about, you want me to, we'll talk first thing in the morning?
sure.
It seems like, if I could just jump in for a moment, it seems like they've got all the materials, they've got all the background, they've got all the discussion, everything's there. I don't understand why they just don't show up, get added to the agenda. There's nothing more that to be supplied or reviewed that's new material, right? Besides our conversation.
It's
Mark,
not like we put a bunch of conditions on it.
we're on the same page as far as I'm concerned. I guess a phone call to Sarah just to get it on the agenda is what it's going to take.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there's no reason to delay the completion of the job, for an extra month because of this.
No.
No, I agree.
So
Okay.
I would say that Ken should probably call, well, Larry, you talked to her, but Ken should call Sarah and say she wants to be on the agenda, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's
I'll
not
make
going to
sure.
force it.
Yeah, I'll make sure.
I
all
think
the
a call
dots-
from Larry would be better.
Yeah, I'll connect all the dots tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Okay. Ken and Deborah, I'm sorry, Deborah.
That's okay.
All right.
Larry, call me if you need me.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
Okay, guys.
thank
Okay.
you, everyone.
So we will
Thank
make a
you.
motion to adjourn then. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Okay, so
Right.
for the rest of the board, you're joining a separate meeting, right?
Yes.
We have a different one to dial into, right?
Yes, you have that?
Oh, so we're all leaving this meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Right.
Thank you. Good night.